Penguin Random House Audio presents The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir, translated by Constance Board and Sheila Malovany Chevalier, with an introduction by Judith Thurman. Read for you by Ellen Archer, with Judith Thurman reading her introduction. To Jacques Boast. There is a good principle that created order, light, and man, and a bad principle that created chaos, darkness, and woman. Pythagoras. Everything that has been written by men about women should be viewed with suspicion, because they are both judge and party. Poulain de la Barre.
Hello, I'm Judith Thurman, and this is my introduction to the second sex. In 1946, Simone de Beauvoir began to outline what she thought would be an autobiographical essay, explaining why, when she had tried to define herself, the first sentence that came to mind was, "I am a woman." That October, my maiden aunt, Beauvoir's contemporary, came to visit me in the hospital nursery. I was a day old, and she found a little tag on my bassinet that announced, "It's a girl." In the next bassinet was another newborn, a lot punier, she recalled, whose little tag announced, "I'm a boy." There we lay, innocent of a distinction between a female object and a male subject that would shape our destinies. It would also shape Beauvoir's great treatise on the subject. Beauvoir was then a 38-year-old public intellectual who had been enfranchised for only a year. Legal birth control would be denied to French women until 1967, and legal abortion until 1975. Not until the late 1960s was there an elected female head of state anywhere in the world. Girls of my generation, searching for examples of exceptional women outside the ranks of queens and courtesans and of a few artists and saints, found precious few. The queens, as Beauvoir remarks, were neither male nor female, they were sovereigns. Opportunities for women have proliferated so broadly in the past 6 decades, at least in the Western world, that the distance between 2010 and 1949, when The Second Sex was published in France, seems like an eternity. Until, that is, one opens a newspaper. The victims of misogyny and sexual abuse are still with us everywhere. While no one individual or her work is responsible for that seismic shift in laws and attitudes, the millions of young women who now confidently assume that their entitlement to work, pleasure, and autonomy is equal to that of their brothers owe a measure of their freedom to Beauvoir. The Second Sex was an act of Promethean audacity, a theft of Olympian fire from which there was no turning back. It is not the last word on, quote, the problem of woman, end quote, which Beauvoir wrote, quote, has always been a problem of men, unquote, but it marks the place in history where an enlightenment begins. Simone Ernestine Lucie Marie Bertrand de Beauvoir was born in 1908 into a reactionary Catholic family with pretensions to nobility. She had a Proustian childhood on the Boulevard Montparnasse in Paris. But after World War I, her father, Georges, lost most of his fortune, and without dowries, Simone and her sister Hélène had dim prospects for a marriage within their class. Their mother, Françoise, a banker's daughter who had never lived without servants, did all the housework and sewing for the family. Her pious martyrdom indelibly impressed Simone, who would improve upon Virginia Woolf's famous advice and move to a room of her own in a hotel with maid service. Like Woolf and a striking number of other great women writers, note Jane Austen, George Eliot, Emily Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Dickinson, Louisa May Alcott, Christina Rossetti, Lou Andrea Salome, Gertrude Stein, Christina Stead, Isak Dinesen, Catherine Mansfield, Edith Wharton, Simone Weil, Willa Cather, Carson McCullers, Anna de Noailles, Juna Barnes, Marianne Moore, Hilda Doolittle, Marguerite Yourcenar, Sigrid Undset, Elsa Lasker Schüller, Eudora Welty, Lillian Hellman, Monique Wittig, to name a few. Beauvoir was childless. And like Colette, who wasn't, she relegated her late-born only daughter to the care of surrogates. She regarded motherhood as a threat to her integrity. Colette is a ubiquitous presence in the second sex, which gives a new perspective to her boast in a memoir of 1946 that, quote, "My strain of virility saved me from the danger which threatens the writer, elevated to a happy and tender parent, of becoming a mediocre author. Beneath the still young woman that I was, an old boy of 40 saw to the well-being of a possibly precious part of myself." Madame de Beauvoir, intent on keeping up a facade of gentility, however shabby, sent her daughters to an elite convent school where Simone, for a while, ardently desired to become a nun, one of the few respectable vocations open to an ambitious girl. When she lost her faith as a teenager, her dreams of a transcendent union, dreams that proved remarkably tenacious, shifted from Christ to an enchanting classmate named Zaza, and to a rich, indolent first cousin and childhood playmate, Jacques, who took her slumming and gave her a taste for alcohol and for louche nightlife that she never outgrew. Not many bookish virgins with a particle in their surname got drunk with the hookers and drug addicts at Le Styx. Her mother hoped vainly that the worthless Jacques would propose. Her father, a ladies' man, knew better. He told his temperamental, ill-dressed, pimply genius of a daughter that she would never marry. But by then Simone de Beauvoir had seen what a woman of almost any quality, high-born or low, pure or impure, contented with her lot or alienated, could expect from a man's world. Beauvoir's singular brilliance was apparent from a young age to her teachers and to herself. An insatiable curiosity and a prodigious capacity for synthetic reading and analysis, a more inspired grind may never have existed, nourished her drive. One of her boyfriends dubbed her Castor, the Beaver, a nickname that stuck. She had a sense of inferiority, it would appear, only in relation to Jean-Paul Sartre. They met in 1929 as university students, she a star at the Sorbonne, he at the École Normale Supérieure, cramming as a team for France's most brutal and competitive postgraduate examination, the agrégation in philosophy. On their first study date, she explained Leibniz to him. Success would qualify her for a lifetime sinecure teaching at a lycée and liberate her from her family. When the results were posted, Sartre was first, and Beauvoir second. She was the 9th woman who had ever passed, and that forever was the order of precedence, Adam before Eve, in their creation myth as a couple. Even though their ideal was of a love without domination, it was part of the myth that Sartre was Beauvoir's first man. After Georges de Beauvoir confronted them about their more or less open sexual liaison, Sartre, the more bourgeois, proposed marriage, and Beauvoir told him, quote, not to be silly, end quote. She had emerged from her age of awkwardness as a severe beauty with high cheekbones and a regal forehead, who wore her dark hair plaited and rolled, an old-fashioned duenna's coif rather piquantly at odds with her appetites and behavior. Both sexes attracted her, and Sartre was never the most compelling of her lovers, but they recognized that each possessed something uniquely necessary to the other. As he put it one afternoon walking in the Tuileries, "You and I are as one, on ne fait qu'un." He categorized their union as an essential love that only death could sunder, although in time, he said, they would naturally both have contingent loves, freely enjoyed and fraternally confessed in a spirit of authenticity. She often recruited and shared his girls, some of whom were her students, and her first novel, She Came to Stay, in 1943, was based on one of their ménages à trois. At every level, Beauvoir reflected years later, of the pain she had suffered and inflicted, quote, "We failed to face the weight of reality. priding ourselves on what we called
Sample complete. Ready to continue?